everybody. I hope everybody's doing well today. Welcome into this live broadcast. And today I'm going to put down my palette and my brush, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. So welcome back for everybody who's been here before, and to those of you that are new, you're all very welcome here. Welcome in, welcome in. So today I'm going to show you how to build a computer, and then maybe later we'll give it a good old paint job, huh? It's a beautiful day today, and it's a wonderful, wonderful time to be building a PC. This is a great family event that everybody can enjoy, from fathers and sons, the daughters and mothers and grandparents, and everybody in between. So come on in, and let's show you just how easy and fun it can be to build your very own computer. Now, I'm going to simply set these items aside here, and we're going to start by prepping something that's called the motherboard. Now, the motherboard is what everything connects to. It's the peacekeeper. It's sort of the Bob Ross of the whole system. Now, for this instance here, we're going to be utilizing this motherboard. Now, this is made by a company called GIGABYTE. And you may not know that name if you're just a regular old individual who's not into computers, but trust me, they're a big name for those who know. And this isn't their highest end motherboard, but it's up there. It's a real good one. And I'm going to show you just how easy it is to get this ready to install into a case. These are computer cases here behind me, and I have an extra one of these. So we're going to build basically what you see right here, except there's going to be a fourth one right over here when we're done. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be a great time, and I sure hope you're following along with me. The only tool we're really going to need for most of this is a number 2 Phillips screwdriver. Magnetized always helps keep things nice and sticky. You don't want to drop a screw down inside of something, make a big mess, or scratch anything. So magnets and computers go along just fine. No need to worry about that. Now, let me just take a minute and let's say hello to some of the friendly folks we have in our chat room today. Let's see who is in here. Oh, we see Dave Murray and Rich Robbins, Stephen Bernstein and XUM, Colin Hilton, Geekazoid Tech, Paul Baxter, Nick Poverman, Matthew Barnes and Jesse Kirk, Bill Ottinger, Patrick Rousseau. Hi guys. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. Let's all get a little closer. Come on, we don't have to be afraid of one another. You can hold each other's hands virtually. We'll save the kumbaya for later though. Okay, so for right now though, just know that you're all friends of mine, and that makes you all friends of each other. And let's share in this enjoyment of building the computer. And we're gonna prep this. We get everything started. We call it a prep. It's short for preparation. And we're gonna prepare the motherboard to be installed into the case. And the reason we do that is it can be very, very challenging to try and install the parts on the motherboard after the motherboard's been installed in the case. So let's get started here now. And for those of you whose names I haven't mentioned, of course, don't feel neglected or alienated. I see you, and I appreciate your being here. Now let's take a look in the box. So here's what the inside of the box looks like if you've never done this before. It's got the motherboard. It's put into this bag. I'm not sure where Carey would want me to put this, but Carey, where would you like the leftover garbage placed? Oh, like that? Isn't he a hoot? All right, let's come down over here. Now, there's obviously not a whole lot of technicality going on here. It's just stickers. We're not going to use the stickers today. So we're going to set those off camera. And in the box, there's another sticker. I know you might be thinking you just bought a box of stickers. That's kind of true, but we're going to ignore the stickers for right now. This is our instruction manual, which you can refer to for any details that we won't cover in the video today. Just drop it. Okay. That guy's something else, isn't he? What a great guy. In the motherboard box, we're going to find something that's called an I/O shield. And I/O is short for input and output, and it's where all your little connectors and USB and keyboard and plugins, all your plugins, they all plug in, and this right here goes on the back of the case. We're going to get to this just a little bit later, so we're going to set it aside for now. And everything else we've got in the box for right now, we can just leave in here. We've got SATA cables, RGB cables, looks like some kind of temperature sensors, and a quick connect. Now don't let any of this overwhelm you. I'm just showing you the parts that are in the box here today, and we're not going to be utilizing all of them, and that's okay. It's all right to have parts left over. It's totally normal. Now, some people are saying they have a hard time hearing me. Let me just adjust. Let me adjust my microphone a little bit here for you guys. Let's see if that works any better. I'm not the loudest person in the world. Everything's very calm. And, you know, in my day, things were stressful. And they're not as stressful as you guys have it today. But I am the original chill pill. It's true. Long before that word existed, Bob Ross existed. So we're just going to relax and enjoy our build today. And we're going to look at our happy little motherboard right here. We're going to take this out of the box. Sorry, I took it out of the box. I'm going to remove the tape that holds the bag closed. We're going to gently remove the motherboard, which is being hugged so lovingly by the bag. And here you'll see we've got some protection placed here, this plastic, to keep things from being damaged in shipping. And if we just bring this around, you'll see that's that I/O I was telling you about, that input and output where all your plugs go. That's all right there. And I'm just gonna find an end to this plastic. And we're just gonna peel this plastic off. Now, if we don't peel the plastic off, these areas can get pretty warm when the computer is turned on, and it could emit an odor, an unpleasant odor. And that's because the plastic that's intended here just for protection and shipping wasn't removed, and it starts to get hot and melt. So let's take this time now to very easily remove this plastic, because once we've installed the motherboard into the case, doing this would be much more difficult. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to find a little piece of that plastic to pull up, but don't give up. Once you get it started, you'll see the rest of it will just come right on off. There we go. Look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? Now, here with our motherboard, you can see, let me just bring it up to the camera and I'll show you. It looks almost like a little city, doesn't it? Like a big satellite photograph of a city going on down there. And it's not unlike a little city. There's little roads that are the electrical circuits, and all roads are basically just a circuit. So it's not too far-fetched when your first reaction may be, wow, that looks like a little city. It is kind of like a little city. Oh, it looks like we missed a piece of plastic right here. Let's go ahead and take that off right now. Oh, and another one. Always good to just double check and make sure you get it all. Now, we only have to install 3 things on this motherboard just to prepare it, and that's going to be our CPU, which is going to go right there, our RAM, which goes in these sockets here, and then an M.2 drive, which is what we're going to boot from and put Windows on. That's going to be our storage drive. And that's going to go underneath this metal plate right here. That's a heat shield, and it helps dissipate the heat so that everything runs nice and cool and fast. So let's go ahead and place this down. Now, I know many of you would like to see some close-ups of my work, so I've arranged for that to happen for you today. Now, let me just bring out my camera. That's going to give you a nice view of all the detail work of what we're doing today. So bear with me here, folks, because my regular crew isn't here. So let's see if we can get this set up here for you. As you can see, I got this camera, and I'm just going to raise it up a bit. That looks good to me, and we'll have to turn this camera on. There we go. Now let's check and make sure this camera here is working and it's focused. Oh, that looks pretty good, folks. Let's just take a look right there. Oh, yes, look at this. Isn't that just gorgeous? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now here we've got our RAM. We can install this RAM very easily. These 2 packages represent 8 gigabytes of memory each. So that's 8, 16, 24, 32 total gigs of RAM. These chips will fit into these sockets very easily. The first thing we need to do is to open these connectors up. Just like that. And let's see if we can get you another camera view here. Here we go. So you can see me doing it both ways from both angles. We could probably make that just a little bigger. Let's see if we can just grab a little edge here. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Okay, now, with the motherboard out, we're going to focus in on this little area right here. So let's see if we can get you zoomed in a little closer. And we're going to turn like this so you guys can get a really good look there at what's going on. Now we're going to take one of our packages of RAM. Now all the parts and all the details for the build today, they're all in the video notes below the video. Be sure and check those out if you would. Now this is how we're going to take our RAM out. We're going to bend the package. Don't bend the RAM. And as you can see, when you build your own computer, you basically start your own sticker collection. And hey, who doesn't already have a sticker collection? Now, with one of the RAM modules removed, as you can see here, I can place them in any of the 4. Because we have 4 RAM modules, we're going to use all 4 of these sockets. There's a little keyhole right here in the RAM, and there's a notch you can see driven right through the center. And that makes sure that we can install the RAM in only one direction. And look at that, it just fits so perfectly. It's kind of hard to see when it's top down, isn't it? Fits right into that groove. And then I'm going to use my thumb and I'm going to push down real gently on the right side and then my left side. Now you don't have to do right or left first, but you just want to do one side and then the other side. Don't try and do both sides at the same time. Let's get the other RAM module out of the container. Now because these were a kit, I'm going to skip one, and this is not a necessary step, but I'm going to skip one because this is one memory channel right here. And then push down and push down. And that locks our second memory module into position. And that's what this really looks like from this angle. Very, very simple so far. See, I told you you could do this. I wasn't kidding. People can really enjoy building computers, and to a point that some people, believe it or not, make a living doing this. I'm going to just repeat the same process with the remaining RAM modules, making sure that we keep everything oriented into the same direction. And we just have one last one here, and we're going to put that one in real quick. Nice and easy. Goes down in the groove. Don't force anything, it should go in very easily. Once you're sure it's in correctly, then you go ahead and apply your pressure down on one corner and then the other corner. And that's installing 32 gigabytes of RAM into a motherboard. It's really, really just that easy. Now the next thing we can do is put our M.2 solid state drive in. Now I realize you're probably going to hear some terminology today that's foreign to you. But that's okay. You just keep listening. You'll understand in context and in time. You don't have to know it all today. In fact, here on this channel, Carey's been doing builds now for many, many years, and some are more basic and some are more advanced. So there's something here for everybody. You're all very welcome to check out the entire library that Carey has. And there's different levels for people of different experience, so you should never feel that the content here isn't for you. It is for you. It's for everybody. Now here, this part right here, this is where our CPU is going to go, and it's got a little cover on it. And we're going to get to that in a second. But just below it, this is where our M.2 drive is going to go, our solid state drive. Let me just align that so you can see. There's a screw right here I have to remove. Now for this, I'm actually going to use a slightly different screwdriver that's a little smaller, because that screw is different than all the other screws that we use when building a computer. Now when I remove this heat shield, it's going to expose a socket below. Be careful not to lose that screw. We're just going to slide this out. There's a little tab in a slot right there. We're going to just gently slide that out. And here we've got a thermal pad. This is going to help pull the heat away from our solid state drive. And it has some protective tape on it to keep it from getting dirty. So we'll just take that tape off. Now what we're going to put in here is one of the best solid state drives available today. It's the Samsung 970 EVO NVMe M.2, and it's 1 terabyte. Now, what do I mean when I say best? It's not the cheapest. It has the best read and write performance of any solid state on the market. And Samsung has been leading the way that other manufacturers in this arena strive to just stay up with. Inside of the box, we've got our happy little NVMe drive right there. It kind of looks like a stick of gum, doesn't it? I've got some double mint right here, as a matter of fact. I mean, if double mint doesn't warm your soul, look at this. You're all familiar with a stick of gum. Well, who would have thought that computer technology would be so similar to an everyday item like that? Now don't install this No, you can chew on this and enjoy this. You don't want to chew on this. I know it's got the word bytes in it, but that's not what that means. Okay, let's go ahead and take this out of its package here. It's just like a little baby coming out of its coming out of its womb right now. Look at that. Now this also has a little groove in it, so it can only go one way into this socket here. If we turn this around, we'll give you another kind of view, what you can see when you look at it this way. If you look into that socket right there, you'll see the groove is on the right side. And we're going to place the drive in on an angle. First we want to line it up and then push it straight in. But make sure you don't force anything. It should go in nice and easy. There we go. Now it's lined up correctly. And you'll see it kind of bounces up and down right there. Now, I've just noticed that we need a little standoff and a screw to lock this down right there. So I'm going to just gently set the motherboard aside for a moment. Just put it right over here. And here in our box, with all the parts, is a little baggie, and that contains our standoff and our screw, and they're very, very tiny, so be careful. You don't want to lose these. Certainly don't want to be working on any carpet. You really wouldn't want to paint on over carpet either, because if you drip the paint, it drips on your carpet. So building a computer actually is very similar to painting in a lot of ways. Now, in the bag here, we'll go ahead and just open this up and take the standoff and the screw out. There we go. Hey guys, you can breathe again, huh? Good to be out of that bag, I bet. Let me just take this out for just a moment. We'll just set this down. So I can put this right here. This one is marked as 80, and that means 80 millimeters because it's 80 millimeters in distance. 80 millimeters this way, 22 millimeters this way. Therefore, this is referred to as the size 2280. As you can see, they come in multiple sizes. Now I can put this back in. And with a magnetized screwdriver, make sure that that little tiny screw stays on the end and we don't lose it. And very slowly and carefully, we're going to bring these parts together. And we're just going to turn that screw until it stops. You don't have to go any further than that. That has installed our M2 drive. Now we can put our little heat cover back on it, which kind of makes it look a little better and helps it perform a little better. And we start by sliding that tab into the groove, first of all. And then we just lower this down on top and tighten this one screw here. You don't want to over tighten anything. Everything is very easy to assemble when it comes to building a computer. And if you're struggling or frustrated, you're just doing something wrong, and maybe you just need to step away for a moment, take a breath, perhaps have a sip of your favorite beverage, and come back in a few minutes and try again when perhaps your mindset is more calm. What you have to understand is this is mostly the most expensive part of building a computer. These parts here. See if I can zoom out a little bit here for you. For the parts that we've installed, this piece here is almost $400 for the part we just put in. These 4 sticks of memory run about $80 a piece. So we've got 80, 160, 240, about $300 worth of memory, approximately. And now we've got our CPU to put in. And the CPU is kind of like the brain of the whole operation. The CPU in this build that we're using here is an Intel Core i7 8086K. The price on these CPUs is quickly heading towards the $500 range. The prices have really started to go up on these, and they're a limited edition. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the tape on the box so we can remove the CPU, and I can put away this other tool. And I'm going to show you just how easy and fun this is. A lot of people get really nervous about stuff like this because of how much money it costs. But, ladies and gentlemen, you just can't buy fun at any price. So we're going to open up the box and get a lot of paperwork, which we'll set aside. And of course, another sticker right here. In the box is our CPU. That's what a CPU looks like. There's not a lot to it, to the naked eye. But under a microscope, this would expose hundreds of millions of transistors. Hundreds of millions. Can you imagine? My, what a world we live in. Now we'll come back over to this camera right up here. Here we go. Now there's a little cover, and that little cover is there because underneath, if you look very carefully, very closely, you'll see those little tiny gold dots. And what those are, if I can zoom in here, I'll show you. Those are little tiny delicate pins, and there's over 1,100 of those little pins in there. And they're very easily damaged. So they put a little plastic cover right here to protect the motherboard any time that there's nothing in there. Because anything, even a light brushing against that socket, can damage the internals of the socket, and then the whole motherboard is bad. And that won't be a warranty issue, because that'd be something you did. But if you follow these steps, it's so simple. I'm going to remove the CPU from its little container here. And if you look real carefully, let's go back here to this other camera. If you look real carefully right here, you'll see there's little indentations on the sides, and that's so you can get your fingers in there and grab the CPU. That's what those little indentations are there for. You see all the way I hold these parts? I always hold these parts by their edges. That's the way they like to be held. And so we're going to keep them happy and hold them the way they like to be held. Now we'll come back over here, over to this camera. And this little chip, this can only go in one direction. Now, if you look, there's a little gold triangle right on this corner. And there's a gold triangle on that corner. And if we line those gold triangles up, rest the CPU edges into the socket, and then just lightly let it sit down with gravity. You can see it's very loose, but it doesn't move left or right or up and down because there's a little ridge that's holding it in place. And now when I close the socket down on top of it, this little groove is going to go underneath that screw, and it's going to put pressure down, and it's going to push that CPU down. And that little plastic lid then is going to pop up. Watch. Let's bring down the lever. It's going to have a lot of tension on it. It takes a little more muscle to push this down when it's got a CPU in it than when it doesn't. Watch real careful. Here we go. Well, there it is. It just lightly popped off. Now we're going to put this in our motherboard box, because if we ever have to send the motherboard back to the manufacturer for any warranty work, we have to take our CPU and RAM out of it. We have to take everything back out the way it was. And that means we have to cover those pins up so they won't be damaged. If you don't cover those pins back up, more than likely the manufacturer simply isn't going to honor the warranty. So let's make sure that we put that away somewhere. And ideally, we'll never need it. Now, that's all there was to prepping our motherboard. We still have to deal with a heatsink and fan for our CPU to keep it nice and cool. It's just one of the parts of the computer that gets the hottest. But we're going to do that a little bit later. And we can start now by preparing our case. So let me go ahead and put this camera away because we're done with it for right now. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm so happy to have you here with me, and I sure hope you're enjoying what we've done so far. This is really the most expensive part of the computer, everything we've done here. And as long as you handle the parts the way I've shown you, you shouldn't have to worry about any electrostatic discharge or really any surprises at all. It's important you work in a well-lit area. I like to work in my kitchen because it's very well lit, and I have a large blank counter to work with. Well, it started as a blank slate, and as you can see, somebody's been a very busy boy. Now, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. We're going to set the motherboard way over here. And right here we've got our power supply. We're using a Seasonic Prime 80 plus gold 750 watt modular power supply. Those are some big words, aren't they? This just provides power so everything can turn on. You don't really need to understand all the technical specifications. What's important is you have more than enough power to deliver so your system has enough power to run. If it doesn't, it may crash or act oddly. Seasonic is a well-respected name in the PC building community, and while there are other manufacturers to consider, if you research your own parts, you may find a lot of enthusiastic people speaking very positively about this particular brand. It's also one of the most expensive brands you can buy, but it includes a great warranty, and they have a great reputation for reliability. Let's go ahead and take the power supply out of its box. Here we've got our documentation and more documentation. We've got a big power cord here. In this bag will be all of the cables we've got. And they've included a little device here that can power the power supply on without a power switch. That's more for diagnostic or technical reasons. We should never need to use that. And then finally, in this beautiful velvet bag is our gorgeous power supply. Let's go ahead and introduce it to everybody. Come on out, power supply. Come on and say hello. Got to come out of your mama's pouch. Oh yeah, I see him squinting from the sunlight. It's been dark in there. Come on into the light, my friend. There you go. Welcome, welcome. Here's the back of the power supply with all of the features and connectors that we can use potentially. Doesn't mean we're going to use them all. We're going to use some of these, and the rest we're just going to leave empty for ideas in the future. You might want to add something to the computer or change something to the computer months or years from now. And that's all there for you to grow into. All the specifications and details for people that are interested are printed here right on the power supply. And there's a fan on the bottom of this power supply. And this fan, it sucks air in, and then it blows that air right out the back. It goes in and out. None of the air actually goes into the case. And so it's important when we place this power supply into our case that our case can breathe from underneath. Otherwise, we're going to suffocate our power supply, and well, that's just not very nice. Now, before I move on to the case, let me just take a few moments to say another quick hello and acknowledge our friends here in the chat room. Hello, friends. Tommy Ellis has contributed 10 pounds. Says, way to go, Bob. Thank you, Tommy Ellis. And let's just see if we've missed any other contributions. It looks like Tommy's the only one. Very good. Thank you, Tommy. Well, I hope all of you said hello. Where do we have people watching us from? Why don't you give us a little shout and tell us where you're watching from? I know we have people watching all over the world. And this is the one true place on the planet where everybody is truly welcome. You're all beautiful people, and I consider you all my friends. Thank you so much for being a part of today's build. Tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? I realize some people have to stay up pretty late to watch me, and that's very kind of you. Wow, look at all the people coming in here from Florida and Britain, Texas and Belgium and Kentucky and Holland and Chicago and Milwaukee and Louisiana and California. There's Austria, San Francisco, Indiana, Minnesota, South Africa, Swaziland, Africa. Welcome in, welcome in. London and Michigan and Altoona, Pennsylvania and Ontario, Canada. I see Geekazoid Tech joins us from Tucson, Arizona. Isn't that where JoJo was from? Get back, JoJo. Your mom was waiting for you. North Carolina, Cape Cod, New York, Denmark. It's 10:30 at night in Denmark right now. Georgia, Slovakia, and Boston, more in England and Netherlands. It's amazing. Sweden, Estonia. You guys are just absolutely amazing. Here we are from all over the world, and we all share this passion, and we're all kind and like-minded. Someone here is joining us from Greece, and someone else from Spain, and someone else is in Atlanta, in Romania. Wow, the world is truly represented here. Thank you, friend. Thank you for joining me today, and I really hope you enjoy your stay. Let me go grab the case. It's going to be similar to what you see on the counter now, except I put it over here. Because as you can see, we've now got 4 of these computers. And each one of them is a little different internally. And that's the beauty of building your own computers. You get to make it your own. You get to express yourself. Just like with painting, you get to decide where you want your happy little trees to go. If you want a blue sky or clouds and waterfalls or rainbows, it's all up to you. We're going to start here by simply removing this glass side panel, and it's there so everybody can see the quality of the work you did inside. So it's important that we take our time and really enjoy our build, because that's really going to show through the glass just how much you enjoyed your build. You can tell just by looking through the glass if somebody did not enjoy the process of building a computer. It does show in the quality of the work. Now, how anybody could not find this to be fun and enjoyable, I don't know, but I encourage you to try. We're going to go ahead and remove this glass. This is tempered glass, so it's pretty difficult to break, but it is pretty easy to scratch. So we're going to set that safely off to the side. Now this exposes all of our internal components inside the case. And here on the other side, we've got this gorgeous, if I don't say so myself, painting from a video game called Nuka-Cola. Oh, I just see something here. Hold on, let me just take a minute and fix this real quick. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, guys. This is what I do, and I just have to make a slight little. There we go. There we go. All right. Yeah. I'll make sure she has a. There's a happy little gun right there. Want to make sure that your laser pistol is happy. Look at that. Just a little more shine. Gorgeous. Oh, it's perfect now. Perfect. So we're gonna push a button right here, and we're gonna set this off to dry. And we're gonna keep it somewhere safe where it won't be scratched. We're gonna come back to that a bit later. Now, here on the back, in this area here, this is where our power supply is going to go. This is where it's going to go on most modern cases, down here on the bottom. And we can remove this little frame. That's going to make installing our power supply so much easier. We'll take that out and just set it down. And we've got a piece of styrofoam in here that has to come out. So we'll just turn this way. I do need a little bit more counter space here, but let's just see what we can do. There it is. We'll just put that where Carey likes to put it. And here's our bobblehead. I think we've seen this bobblehead before. Let's see which bobblehead is included. Oh no, this one's different. Oh. Now the bobblehead is not normally something that comes with a computer case. If you've never built a computer before, that's just a little something extra that the case manufacturer threw in for fans of the game Fallout, which one would presume you would be if you bought this case. Now also in here, if I turn this around, we're going to have a little box that's got all of the mounting hardware that we need. It looks like we got a little cable that came off. We'll address that here in a moment. Oh, I gotta turn it around this way, don't I? There we go. Now right down here, you'll see there's a little white box down here. And this box comes out with a little encouragement. If you have difficulty with it, like I am, you can try just coaxing a little bit more. Or we can just take that tray out of there, which will make life just a little bit easier. Just take our number 2 Phillips screwdriver and unscrew these 2 thumb screws. Look at that. You see? And now the whole tray can come out. Now it's a lot easier for me to take that box out of here. Boy, it's not supposed to be in this tightly. Maybe we can bring it out the other side. Maybe that'll be a little easier if we come out this way. Oh, there we go. And that's going to have all of our screws and mounting hardware for our case. So we'll just set that there for now. And I'm going to just put this right back in where it was. And we're going to get all these cables untangled and nice and neat and orderly. There it is. And we'll just tighten those back down again. Now those trays are there to install mechanical hard disk drives, and we've got room there for 2 of them. One there and one there. We have room for solid state drives here on the back. There's one there, and up front 3 more. Now we're going to turn this back around. And with our power supply, we should have some screws here in this bag with the cables. We'll set the bag here. Well, this is just cables, nothing but cables and power cable. Maybe the screws are in this bag right here. It could be in here. We've got zip ties and Velcro ties. Here we go. There's our happy little power supply screws right there. Now, we're going to grab the power supply here, and we'll gently place it on the counter like so. And we know we're going to install with that fan facing down. So this piece can go on. With this part here, this is going to be the part that's the back of the power supply, so we're going to face that part down. This is the part we're going to be working on, the part that's got the big hole in the switch. I just noticed they've also got another little piece of plastic covering the company's logo, and that can come off right now. We'll just peel that off. And now that logo is nice and shiny. Setting this down, we look at how we want the power supply to install. So that's our fan facing down. We're going to set this on the counter just like this with the fan to my right. So when I install it, it's going to go in just like that. So we'll put the frame on it by lining up the mounting holes of the power supply. And as you can see, you may have to rotate the frame. And using our bag of screws that came with the power supply, we can secure that now. Now this is a Phillips number 2 magnetized driver handle. And we're just going to gently start each screw, and don't tighten them down yet, because you want to be able to move this piece as needed to get all the other holes to line up. Now with them all started, I can go ahead and tighten them down. And you don't want to take this too far. Once the screw stops, you can just give it a little bit more of a twist. And that's all it needs. Anything more than that is just too much. There we go. Oh, I think it's feeling pretty happy now. It's getting back into its home where it was meant to be. And this is what it looks like when the frame's been installed. Now, not all cases use frames. Different case manufacturers have different power supply mounting techniques, so this really only applies to this case here or other cases made by this manufacturer that have this design. Now we can simply place this back in and just push it. That's all you have to do. Gently push it in. You may have to sort of lift up on the bottom of it to get it to align. And we'll just gently tighten these thumb screws, just so it doesn't fall out on us while we're moving the case around while we're doing some more work. We won't be using the power supply until everything's been installed, and then we'll run our cables. So for right now, we're just going to keep the power supply locked in this position, turning these thumb screws. And you may have to sort of hunt around a little bit to get the screws to align with their holes. So be patient, be understanding. And don't get frustrated or angry. If you start feeling that, it's time to just walk away for a little bit. Sometimes when I'm frustrated and angry, I like to come and build a computer. It gets my mind off of my troubles and gives me a sense of fulfillment and accomplishment. I think most people are very much driven to feel. This is having a little bit of difficulty. But it's not that critical at this juncture, other than to just keep the power supply from sliding around or falling out while we're working on the case. If things feel like you're struggling too much, it may be that the frame isn't quite centered properly. And if we loosen all these screws, that will enable us to move the frame slightly left and right. And then it should line up. See how much easier that went on without any struggle? Very simple. And now we can tighten the frame back down. Now you don't normally have to do that. But if you're finding things aren't fitting properly, then simply backing off some screws to give yourself a little wiggle room can often make a very difficult problem a very simple one with a modicum of effort. Now, when I was painting, I used to talk about painting happy little clouds, but you guys today, it seems you have your own happy little clouds like Amazon Web Services and Google Drive. My, how times have changed, haven't they? It's a beautiful place, isn't it? Isn't the world a beautiful place? And we're also so lucky to be alive and see this beauty and experience this wonderful technology. And there's absolutely such a fulfillment of enjoyment and pleasure of harnessing that technology and taking control of that technology. And it's so simple, and it's so easy, and it's so rewarding. I simply don't know why everybody doesn't take a day, at least once a year, to build their own computer. So with our power supply installed, we can go ahead and put our motherboard into the case. So we're going to lay the case down to do this. So we're working with gravity rather than against it. I did not open this, did I? In this box is going to be the screws we need to mount the motherboard into the case. Because every case manufacturer is different, they have to provide the screws. So in the box is all the hardware, all the screws, documentation. It's all inside of here. And every case, of any brand new computer case, will come with the screws because different cases hold a different amount of components or different types of components. And that's why it's important when you're building your own computer that you pick the case that's right for you and your needs. Now we can put our I/O shield in. That's going to go right down here in this corner, and we put that back in the motherboard box. So let me just set the motherboard aside for just a moment here. I'll just hold this in one hand. And in the box here, let's take the I/O shield out. Now you see I'm always putting the motherboard on the motherboard box, and I do that because it's a natural anti-static anti-conductor. It does not conduct electricity, and it won't scratch my countertop because the bottom of this motherboard has all these little, what they call soldering points, and they're very sharp. And not only do you not want to touch them for electrostatic discharge purposes, but it can hurt. There we go. Now our I/O shield here is in a little plastic bag, and obviously we have to take this out. Here we go. That's what the I/O shield looks like. And it's going to go right back here, and it's going to align. See that? See how that aligns? So we first place it here in our case. And people that do this for the first time, they always struggle. They always struggle with it. So you really need to take your time. And, you know, if you want to get good at it, once you finally get it in place, take it back out and put it back in. And when it goes back in, take it out, put it back in until you get faster at it, if that's something you want to get better at. On the other hand, if you're like most people, you'll be so glad by the time it finally locked in, you won't want to risk taking it back out. But it does get easier with time. Now I'm going to grab the motherboard here. There's not going to be a lot I can show you on this point because of the angle we're on, but I'm going to pick the board up by its edges, and I'm going to place it here inside of the case. And I'm going to line up those I/O ports with that I/O shield. I want to make sure that they all come through here straight. And sometimes that requires to lift up the back of the board while pushing it forward. And when it locks into place, there's a little post that sticks up underneath the motherboard. That's going to hold the board into position for us. You'll actually feel it when it locks in correctly when it's aligned, and you can see all of these ports lined up with their holes right now. And in this bag of screws, it's labeled 6-32 flat is what it says. This is what we're going to use to secure the board. So we're going to need 8 of these screws. And using my mechanical screwdriver with a magnetic tip, I can at least get one of these started here for you. There we go. Now I can pick the case up and show you what this looks like. It's starting to look like a computer now, isn't it? We've got 3 mounting holes on the bottom, across the middle, and across the top, with that center post holding the board in place. That consumes one of the mounting holes. That leaves us with 8, and we want to make sure we use all 8 of those to lock the motherboard into position, make sure that it's not going to move on us. You don't use any washers or anything like that. And when you do this yourself, you should do it with the case laying flat. I'm only showing you this way so you have a better view of what I'm doing. But this is not the way I would recommend that you go about it, especially if you've never built a computer before. This is a lot more difficult. I make it look easy, but that's only because I've done it so many times. So that's screw number 5. We have 3 more. We got to do the whole top row up here. There's one there. And we're going to put one right up here. We have our very final last screw, and that's going to go in this top corner right up here. Now don't over tighten those, you don't want to crush the motherboard. It's just there to secure the motherboard, to make sure that the motherboard doesn't shake loose or make electrical contact with the metal on the case. Be sure that the number of standoffs behind the board match the number of mounting holes on the board in order to prevent a short from occurring. We're going to just take all these extra parts here and we're going to put them all in our motherboard box. And that way we have them all together in one place. Excuse me, folks, give me just a minute. Oh, hello friends. Let me just take a look here in the chat room and see what friends we've got joining us now. It's a lot of work maintaining a beard of this lusciousness. Okay. With our motherboard installed and our power supplies installed, most of the build's already done. There's a cooling solution we're going to put on here, which is a little extreme. So if you're a first-time builder, this may not be something you want to copy. However, you certainly can if you're ambitious enough. But it's not entirely necessary to go with a cooler this extreme. And the way we're going to put the cooler in is this case comes apart a little bit more. Here underneath on the bottom, if we give it a good pull, it does require quite a bit of muscle. There it goes. And this whole front cover pulls off just like that. And we'll just set that right over here for now. Now this top cover also comes off the same way. I'm just going to pull up on it. It does take a bit of strength. I don't suggest that you yank on it, but rather just apply pressure until it starts to give, and then gently raise it up and remove it. Now up here on top, which you can't really see, there's a removable frame, and we're going to take that out. There's 4 thumb screws that hold this frame in position. I'm going to take out these 2. And those 2, right like that. And you'll see the little thumb screw there on the end of the screwdriver. Gotta love the magnetism. And now this frame simply comes straight out. And we'll set it down. And that's going to make our next part so much easier to deal with. Let's move this back. And what we've got for a liquid cooler is right here. And this was something that was started for another computer build that Carey was working on, and he said we can go ahead and use this for this build here. So this is our radiator. This is the water pump, and this runs the liquid through, and it draws the heat off of our CPU and cools it just like a car radiator. Really no different than that. And here is our frame. And knowing that the frame is going to go in like this, right? This is where our frame goes. Then we can visualize how we would install our cooler. And it appears for us to install this, we're going to have to remove these fans. They're in our way. So we're going to really quickly remove all of these fans. There we go. Just two more left. Now if we visualize the way these fans are going to sit and the way the radiator goes in, the radiator is going to line up into the frame. See how much easier this is to do outside of the case. Imagine on most cases you have to work pretty hard to get to this point. And we're going to turn it upside down so we can line up the mounting holes of the radiator. There we go. Excuse me just a minute there, folks. Now we can put our fans back on. And this is always a little bit of a challenge. And that is we want to make sure our fans are installed in the right direction. And I'm going to be moving the air through our radiator. So on this side of the fan here, this is the side that sucks air in. This pulls the air in. And this side that has this frame, this is where the air is coming out of. So we want to put these fans on, so they're going to suck air from inside of our case and blow it through the radiator, out the top, out into the happy, wonderful universe. So I'm going to just place the fan back on. And when I put the screws back in, it's going to sandwich the fan. Well, it's sandwich the frame between the fan and the radiator using the same screws that was previously holding these fans into place. Now these are not the original fans that came with this radiator. These are made by a company called Noctua, and this may not be a company you've heard of before unless you're in the industry, but they're very well known for making fans that are quiet and long lasting. Now what I've done here is, remember this part here is the top. So we want to make sure our cables are coming out of the top. And right now I've placed it in there with the cables going out of the back, and that's just a happy little mistake. It's really not a problem. We're just going to turn that back around. There we go. Very easy to fix that. Nobody will ever know. Now we're going to line the screw up with the hole, which is a little hard to do when the screw's already in there. So first we line the radiator up properly. That's better. And now we can set this back down. And we'll do the same thing. We're going to make sure the fan faces the same direction, the cable comes out in the same direction, and we'll align those. And we're just going to start each screw on the opposite corner. Very good. There we go. And now with those 4 screws started, the other 4 will just go very simply. They won't put up much of a fuss at all. There's our last one right here, folks. Look at that. I'm going to just use my regular screwdriver here. You don't want to over tighten these screws at all. They've got to be secure, but you don't want to squish everything down. These all feel pretty good to me. I think it looks good too. Now that is our CPU cooler installed in this frame, and then the frame can be placed back into position. We bring in this heavy part first, and we can go ahead and route our cables through this slot in the back that pushes those cables out behind the window where they're not going to be seen behind the motherboard. And then the whole frame drops right back in, and it locks into position, leaving us only to place the thumb screws back in that secure the frame. So, as I mentioned, this can be a lot more difficult with other case manufacturers, but the folks over at NZXT really thought that much through. And we just want to make sure that that is fully seated properly, and it is. And we can put these screws back in to lock that radiator into position. This keeps it secure, so if the computer gets moved around or shipped, things won't fall apart. Okay, one last one here. Here we go. You see how easy that was? Now we can put our covers back on that we just took off. I'll start by placing this cover back on first. You got to put the top on first. You just set it on there and push straight down. And then here we've got the front of the computer right here. And we will just simply place that on, and it will snap back into position. That is a happy Nuka-Cola case right there. And we can turn this around. It's really starting to look like a fairly fancy computer now, isn't it? Isn't that just gorgeous? We're just going to look here in the chat room and see what my friends are saying. So to place our CPU cooler now onto our CPU, we have a little preparation to do here. You see here, these are going to hold more 2.5-inch solid state drives. I like to take these out because I don't like the way they look. So I'm just going to put them here in the motherboard box, and if at some point we have to add more storage, we can do that. But for now, I want to keep it looking as clean as possible. And with the cooler, we've got our directions and screws and parts right here. And we should be able to just take this little frame and place it here on the back. And this goes around the edges of the CPU in those little holes. There it goes. Now what I've done is put this black frame here, and there's little posts are sticking out here in these corners. I know it's hard for the camera to pick that up. And we have to get some thermal compound. Now thermal compound is what keeps everything nice and cool. You want to use just the right amount. You can't use, if you use too little or you use too much, then you're not going to achieve the best cooling possible. And of course we want you to have that. Now this is something I'm naturally an expert at because this involves painting. And our paint today is going to be Arctic Silver 5. And yes, it's actually that color. So we're going to do a little finger painting today. I know you don't see me do that very often. You always see me use a brush. And we'll start with a nice clean nitrile glove, and we'll remove the cap and place some thermal compound right here. Yeah, it's like a very dark silver. And then I'm going to just put a nice coat of thermal compound on there. Doesn't quite enough, doesn't quite cover the chip, so we're going to give it a little bit more. We want a nice thick coat of paint. You shouldn't be able to see through it. You shouldn't be able to read the CPU through the thermal compound. So just a nice, happy thermal compound here. It's really very, very simple to apply. You would just want a nice, even layer all the way across the surface of that CPU. You'll see we used very little of the thermal compound. And we didn't have to get it everywhere. Normally you see me wearing my blue button-down shirt because my paints will spill on my shirt. This is what happened here. I had a little accident with a unicorn earlier today. He's going to be okay. So with our thermal compound applied, we can now take some standoffs here. Well, those aren't the standoffs we need, are it? Where's our standoffs? Here they are. I'm going to take these standoffs, and we've got 4 of them. they look like this. And what we're going to do is, with holding this, we're going to hold the back frame back in, and we're just going to tighten these standoffs just with our fingers. We're not using any tools here. You'll see I do opposite corners on this, and that way when I put this one in, I won't have to hold it anymore. There we go. And then we just have these last two to do. Isn't that lovely? It's just so smooth and so easy. And now I'm going to set the case back down so I can place this part on top, and I'm going to use gravity to assist me on this. So it makes installing just a lot less difficult. It makes it much easier. And so to do that now, I'll lay the case down. Then hold on to the water pump head here, because it's heavy and you don't want it hitting anything in here and causing any damage. There's a plastic cover, and that's to keep this whole bottom copper area nice and clean from any contamination or dust or fingerprints. And now I can set it right on top of those standoffs we just placed in. And grabbing a thumb screw now, we can secure it into position. Nothing requires any force. Just be very gentle and be very patient. If you find yourself struggling at any point, you're doing something incorrectly, don't force anything on a computer build. Just have those last two standoffs to put in. I'm sorry, not standoffs. These are the thumb screws that screw onto the ends of the standoff that secure the water pump onto the surface of our CPU. And it's going to be really good for pulling the heat off. There we go. Now I can bring this back up and show you what that looks like. And we'll use our screwdriver, and we're going to tighten these down, and we're going to do opposite corners. And just tighten it until it doesn't turn anymore. It will come to a stop, and then move to the next one. Wait for it to come to a stop, then move to one of the last two remaining. These pipes do move, so you can, if they get in your way, you can gently shove them aside. And then we're just going to double check everything and make sure that none of the others have become loose from tightening the ones around it. And they're all locked in position really well now, and that installs our cooling solution. I would say if there's one improvement we could make, is that surface is supposed to be a mirror-like finish. So we're going to grab a microfiber cloth here, and we're going to just polish that right up. Look at that. Gorgeous. Now we have some fans we can hook up if we want to. We have this rear case fan right here, and that can plug into any of the fan headers on the motherboard. We just happen to have one conveniently located right there that I'm going to use. This case also has 3 fans up front. So if we turn this around here so you can see it, there's a little fan splitter that comes with this case, and it looks like this. And the idea here is that we take each of these 3 fans and plug each one into a connector on the fan splitter, and it doesn't really matter which fan goes to which plug on the splitter. It divides them all equally, treats them all the same. We should have one more. There it is. We'll place that one in there. And for right now, we can just run this cable right up through the bottom and bring it up through the front. So if I turn this around now, all you're going to see is that one cable right there. And these are all fan headers on this motherboard right down here. And we'll just use the first one available because it's convenient. And it just installs that easy. Now, speaking of the cabling, we have our power switch, power LED, hard drive LED, USB. All of that can be all hooked up utilizing these cables here. And what we can start with, if we look at this one particular cable right here, this says HD audio. And if we can get this out of the way of all our other cables, let's take a quick look here. Now's a good time to make sure that you don't have any cables routed around each other. We're going to run that all the way to the back. Just straightening out our cables, make it nice and clean. And here on the front, you'll see I brought that cable in right down here in this corner because the plug we need is right down here. Just like that, we just gently push that on. And always make sure you give it a little light pull, make sure it doesn't just fall off. That's how you know you've got it in there. Come back around. The next cable we can put on right here, this is our USB 2 for the front of the case. This case has 2 USB 3s and 2 USB 2s on top. And so to plug in our USB 2s, it's a connector that looks kind of similar on the end, but it says USB 2 right on it. We can bring that up and underneath here just like we did before. And if I turn the case around so you can see, this is going to plug in to either of these 2 connectors right here. So we're going to use that connector because it just seemed to be right. Alternately, we could, if we want to make our cabling look a little better, we could bring this cable, just have to wiggle and pull, there it goes, it comes off. We can bring this cable back down and up on this side. And if we so choose, we can plug the cable in on the connector next to it instead. The computer doesn't mind. You can use one or the other for any USB 2 device, so you can have them both filled if you have devices to fill them. And coming back around, we've got our front port I/O. I'm sorry, this is our hard drive LED, power LED, and power switch. This case does not have a reset switch. So we'll bring that down, same as before, right up through the bottom here. There we go. Now you can refer to your motherboard manual to figure out where each of these cables go. It's fairly industry standard for the hard drive power LED, for the hard drive LED to go on the last 2 pins at the bottom with the positive cable facing the edge, and the power LED goes directly above that. Old Bob here needs his reading glasses. These are pretty small connectors, and of course the kids, they can see this stuff just fine. But us folks who've been around a little while, well, we might have to get a little assistance here. So we're going to go ahead and put our power LED on. Oh, my little hard drive LED cable came off. Let's put that back on there again. So hard drive LED cable goes here. The power LED cable goes on just above it. Positive above positive and negative above negative. Oh, Bob here's going to need a flashlight too, it seems. Oh, that's a lot better. Okay. There's some irony that I need an LED to see where to plug in my LEDs. And then finally we have our power switch, and that's going to go right beside the power LEDs that we just plugged in. And then we're just going to take that slack and we're going to push it back out the back side. Because remember, there's a big glass panel that's going to showcase all the internal components here. Okay, now we have our USB 3.0 connector. Should be the last one remaining. Let's take a look and see. I want to route this a little differently. Plug this for just a moment, and we're going to just run this cable back behind these other ones. I think that's going to be a lot prettier. There we go. It was all hooked up correctly. I just didn't like the way it was looking. Just minor changes for aesthetic purposes. Okay. And now, where is our USB 3 cable at? Ah, here it is. It was all tightly wound up along the side. So this is a different looking cable here. And let's see if it's got enough space to reach where we need it to go on the inside. Somebody had this case before me and just made some modifications to the cable management on their build. So we're going to just take it out of the cable management tracks for right now, because we just want to get things hooked up. We're not worried about making the cables look pretty just yet. Now this connector just fits on right here, and it's going to just lock into place with the friction. And that's it. That installs everything but our power. Once we get power installed, we'll be able to turn the machine on and test it and make sure that it works okay. So far, everything looks fantastic. This rear fan and these 3 front fans are hooked up, and we will clean up this cable management once we've assured that everything's working as it should. That's the very last step. Obviously, if you were painting a picture and you wanted to protect that painting, then you would cover it with an acrylic, a clear acrylic. But you don't do that until you know you're done painting. In a similar way, we won't worry about our cable management until we know everything we've built functions properly. Because having to take something back apart and deal with uncabling it can be a little frustrating. And so we want to make sure we keep this as happy and positive along the entire course of the journey to ensure you'll want to come back again and again. Now, when it comes to hooking up our power cables, we have to go to these bags here They contain a number of different cables for us to use. And there's the largest cable in the bag, which let me take out of here right now. That's our motherboard power cable. It's bigger than any other cable. It's very unique looking. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in this large end of the cable, the very big connector right here. We're going to plug that right into the motherboard right now. There's only one place on the motherboard where that's going to plug in. It's a very unique looking connector, and the clip almost always faces the edge of the board. So if you're using the same parts as me, you'll follow right along. We're going to just line that up and push it on, and we should hear it click. And that locks into position. Oh, almost lost my microphone. All right, and we're going to run that out right through the back. Just like this. Keep that cable management looking nice and pretty. Right out through the back. There we go. See that? Isn't that lovely? And now, over here, back in our bag of cables, we'll have another one. It's going to say CPU on the edge of it. If you see cables that say PCIe, that's for your graphics card. So this cable right here says CPU on one side of it, and there's actually two of them. And on this board, there's an 8-pin connector, and each of these represents 4 pins, so we push them together to make an 8. Once again, we're going to start here on the board with the clips facing the outside edge. And we'll reach up in that top corner and align it. And this is a bit of a tight fit, folks. You got to really focus and have good lighting. And of course, be patient. I need my flashlight again to see in there. There we go. When it finally does align, you will feel the difference. You'll know when it's in the slot properly, and then you'll press it down until you hear it click into position, and you give it a light tug to make sure that doesn't fall out. That ensures that you've installed it correctly. We take the rest of that cable, we're going to run it out through the back. There we go. There we are. Okay, finally, we have to power all the pump and the NZXT logo here, so we need a regular SATA power cable, which is going to be in the other bag, which I haven't opened yet. So here we've got the other bag. And this will have the SATA cables that we need right here. I'll turn the case around so you can see what's going on back here. Now, one of the things the SATA cable needs to hook onto is our NZXT logo that's going to light up. So we'll set that one up right here. It doesn't matter which of these connectors you use, just think about what your cable management's going to look like. What's going to make it look the best. That connects that one, and we're going to need one here for not only our water pump, but our two fans as well, which should be part of our liquid cooler. So going back to the parts that came with our liquid cooler, we have a USB to hook up, and we have power and fans to hook up. So you'll see there's a very narrow connector here. It's very different than any of the other connectors. And that's going to plug into the pump itself. That's what's going to give the pump the power it needs. And once again, I'll get my flashlight out so I can see around the edges of the pump. Ah, here we go. Let's just turn this around a little bit more. Right up on the top center of the pump is the slot for this connector to plug in. It only goes in one of two possible directions, so if it doesn't go in easily, turn it around and try it again. When you have it aligned properly, it should seat and lock into position. This little fan connector here goes onto our CPU fan header on the motherboard, which is a different color than all the other fan headers. At least it is on this motherboard. You'll see up here it's white. And we simply slide the connector over onto the white fan header. Remember, don't use any excessive force. If it's lined up correctly, it should slide on with ease. There it is. And now these are the plugs for our fans to plug into, and then this is going to give it power. So we're going to run both of these up through the back and out. We're going to keep our cabling nice and clean inside of here. And we'll do that with both of these. I don't like the way that cable's run, so I'm going to correct it right now. We'll run it behind these other ones so it looks a little bit better. There it is. And we can turn this back around. Here we go. So there's our SATA power cable that we hooked into the NZXT Lite. And then here is our power cable for our water pump, which again we can plug anywhere on here. So we'll just plug that in like this. There we go. And then we've got our fan plugs. Now there's 4 fan plugs here, and that's so you can have 4 fans on that radiator, 2 pulling air in and 2 on the other side of the radiator pulling air out. So we got pushing air in from the bottom and pulling air out from the top. Now we're only using 2 of the fans. And these connectors, if you look inside of these connectors, this one has 3 pins inside of it, and this one has 3 pins inside of it. This one has 4 pins inside of it, and this one has 3 pins. You must hook up one of your fans to the connector that has 4 pins. That's the very first connector or last connector, depending on how you look at it. But if you just look inside the connector, you'll see one has 4 pins. And so we must, let's take this extension off. We must plug one of our fans that goes to the radiator on that 4 pin, and then we'll just use the next one in line just for cable management cleanup purposes. We'll plug the other fan right beside it. Now finally, the last step is to plug the ends of all these cables into the back of our power supply unit. And we've got 3 of them. This one, and this one. And it can be difficult to get in there with bare hands, but I'm going to try it. Might have to take the power supply out. Let's just give this a go. Let's see what happens. I apologize, it's not going to be a very good camera view for you guys, but to be honest, I'm right in front of it, and even I don't have a very good view of what's going on in there. All right, there's one connector. Oh, no, it just fell off, so I didn't have it all the way in. Let's try that again. That's better. And now we can plug in the other large connector right beside it. That one's going in much, much easier. You'll often hear them click when they're properly seated all the way into the socket. Sometimes you can get a connector in just enough that it provides power, but then it ends up not being fully seated and create unusual problems with a system, such as random power-offs or random blue screens. Now this one that says CP or PSU on it, it says PSU, that's the end that goes to the back of the power supply unit, PSU. There's certain connectors on the back of the power supply that have different amounts of holes, so you cannot plug this into the wrong place. So you can have peace of mind knowing that if the connector's in the right place, it fits. If it's in the wrong place, it simply won't go in. There we go. And then we have our final connector right here. I think I want to put this one all the way into the back. Let's take a quick look here and see if I can reach back there. They're all equal. It doesn't really matter which of these bottom row connectors I use. Really just doing it for looks. Tell you what, we'll meet them in the middle. There we go. Now we're ready to turn it on for the very first time and check to see if it's going to work. It's kind of exciting, isn't it? So we're going to start with a power cable. I guess I can put my little flashlight away. These are all our extra power cables. We're not using those for the rest of this build, so we'll go ahead and put those back in this bag, and we'll keep them for future upgrades or repairs. Now I have to find my power cable, which I had here somewhere. But we'll just grab a different power cable. Here we go. We'll make sure the switch on the power supply is in the off position. And we're going to apply the power, plug the plug in, and we'll give it power in from the wall. And we're going to need a keyboard and a mouse. Let me go grab a keyboard and mouse. My hair's a little funky today, folks. Do you like my funky hair? So to test our build, I've got a Logitech wireless combo. It's a wireless mouse and a wireless keyboard that run together off the one little USB receiver that we can plug in any USB port at all. And let's clear a little room here. My little thermal compound away, so we'll get that cleared from the counter. And then we need to grab an HDMI cable so we can plug the video in. We're using the video built into the CPU. We'll be adding a graphics card a bit later when graphics card prices come down. My guess is after the first of the year. But if there's a good sale between now and then, we'll pick one up. So I'm going to go ahead and plug into HDMI here on the back of the motherboard. Okay, folks. We're ready to test our computer to see if it's happy. Are you excited? I'm pretty excited. Before I hit the power switch, I need to make sure the power on the back of the power supply is in the on position. And I'm going to turn this a little bit so you can see some of the lighting, both on the case, the motherboard, and on the liquid cooler. Here we go. So we're going to switch you over to the video input right here. So this screen here shows there's no video signal being sent. We're going to hit the power button. Now that sound is this little nylon here hitting the front fan. Get that out of the way. Now your first boot up may take a little longer than a normal boot up, so be sure and be patient. System has turned itself off. Be patient, it may come on its own. And it did. And something's happening. Now there's no Windows or anything installed yet, so we should get some kind of an error, or we should go into the BIOS itself. And we got the error, reboot and select proper boot device, which is perfect. It's great. The reason the NZXT logo is not lit up yet is we have not hooked up the USB cable that goes from the water pump down onto this other USB header. And that's going to give us controls for the water pump, but we're not going to do that just yet. I want to update the BIOS first. If I have a USB flash drive here where I've already downloaded the latest BIOS from the manufacturer, and I've placed it onto this flash drive before we started today. And so what I'm going to do is plug this here in the back. Again, any USB port will work fine. Hit the power button, and I'm going to hit delete on the keyboard repeatedly until we go into the BIOS. Now here in the BIOS, we should be able to use the mouse. We should get information about what version of BIOS we have, which is, right here it says F4. The latest version is F10. And the way we're going to flash the BIOS is we've already downloaded from the manufacturer's homepage back to where I was. Go to QFlash, click Update BIOS, and it sees the BIOS I downloaded on the flash drive automatically. We click on that, and we just wait a moment. It's important your computer does not get interrupted during this process. We want to make sure that the computer's left alone and given every opportunity to do this very critical step. If you lose power or reset the computer during this process, you may end up with a motherboard that no longer works, and you'll have to contact your manufacturer to make arrangements to send it back to them for them to correct it for you. So we're going to give that just a moment. It's a little tough having this much hair in this day and age, and it was easier to do in the 80s. We're 88%, 89, 90% done. And it's going to automatically restart our computer for us. And we're going to let that do that. Hands off. Just be patient. The system is physically shut off, and it has physically turned itself right back on again. Once again, it's important you're patient during this process. It has turned itself off again and back on again. This is all normal. One more time and back on. And we should see the BIOS screen this time. There we go. We're going to be back right where we started from with no bootable device. That's because we've not installed Windows yet. We give it a minute while it processes, and it determines there's nothing for it to boot from. Oh, it's turned off one more time. Once again, all completely normal. And we're back in the BIOS. And here, as you can see, we're on version F10. So we're at the latest version of the BIOS. We'll go ahead and turn the computer off and remove the flash drive. We won't ever use this BIOS update file on this motherboard ever again. Now here I've got a Windows 10 bootable installation media, which you can make yourself following. Carey's got a video. If you just type in CareyHolzman Windows 10 USB, you'll find his video on how you can make the media that I'm going to use right now. We're plugging into any port here on the back of the system. We're going to turn it on. And the system should determine that that's the only port we have to boot from. It's the only bootable device is that flash drive. And so therefore, without touching anything, it should just boot from it because it has nothing else to boot from other than that. As you can see, the little dots going around in a circle, that tells us it's booting off of that flash drive. And here begins our Windows 10 installation, where we're going to click Next. Click Install Now. We're going to click I don't have a product key right down here. We're going to go to Windows 10 Pro and click Next. We're going to accept the license agreement and click Next. We're going to do a custom install. It sees our 1 terabyte Samsung 970 EVO is the only available drive. This is correct, so we hit next. And now Windows 10 will partition, format, and install Windows. And we just have to wait. And that completes our build. I hope you guys enjoyed today's build. If anybody has any questions for me before I return back to heaven, I would be more than happy to do my best to answer any questions my friends have here. So friends, do you have any questions for me? I suppose while we're waiting, I can do just a little touch up. We've already done our first boot for the Windows install. What size of a flash drive do you use for the BIOS update? I recommend you use something 16 gigabytes or smaller in FAT32 format. Bob, if there was a video card in there, would it need more fans, or are the fans in front enough? Oh, the fans in front are plenty. It's ready for a graphics card. We have a power supply that can power 2 graphics cards, and we have enough fans up front to cool down 2 graphics cards, so no additional parts would be needed. Thank you for your question. Does increasing from 16 gigabytes of RAM to 32 gigabytes of RAM make video editing faster? In most cases, it probably will. However, it depends on what video editing software you're using. It also depends on the kind of video you're rendering or editing, if it's 4K or 360 or 3D, or how many edits and transitions you have. These things consume more resources. So the more complex the video is, the more you'll notice the benefits of more RAM. A simple short video with few edits or transitions or titles, that would be probably less noticeable from 16 gigs to 32 gigs. But one thing's for certain, it won't make your computer any slower. Now we can finish our Windows install by clicking United States for yes here. And we'll click US and skip. And we're going to skip our Ethernet configuration for now. And we're just going to put a user's name in here of user. And click. It doesn't look like it says user. I suppose it does. We'll click next. And no password will be needed for this system. We're going to decline Cortana. And we're going to click no. And we're going to turn off all of these settings here. Although you can adjust them as you see fit to meet your needs and your preferences. There we are. And accept. And that completes our Windows 10 installation. We'll go to Windows Update and download some updates. Of course, we've got drivers to install and Windows to activate after we've confirmed everything works correctly. And we can finally do our cable management and put our panels back on, which should be good and dry by then. Kind of feel like my face is crooked. I have to adjust my face. There it is. Very happy. Donnie Seeger has contributed $5 to today's live stream. Thank you, Donnie. He says, what a coincidence. I'm also working on my build. Glad to see you are live. I used to watch Bob Ross when I was a child. Very nice, Donnie. Thank you for your contribution. Bob the Bomb has contributed 10 pounds. He says, thanks for the entertainment, Bob. Buy a couple of happy little brushes on me. Well, thank you, Bob the Bomb. And of course, from earlier, Tommy Ellis, 10 pounds. Way to go, Bob. Thank you, Tommy. There's our build. We can go and we can confirm all the hardware is installed properly. We can go into our control panel. I like to go to the large view and go to System. We can see our 32 gigs of RAM is installed. We can see our processor is properly recognized. We can go to Advanced System Settings and we can go to Startup and Recovery Settings and turn off Automatically Restart on a blue screen. That way we have time to read the blue screen or perhaps even take a picture of the blue screen with our cell phones to get help with that. With that box checked, the screen may go blue and the system will restart, and you may not have enough time to read everything. Now, how fast does the system boot, you might ask? Well, let's do a restart and let's try. I'd say that's a pretty good fast boot time, and we don't even have our drivers installed, which will only improve that and make it better, including the Samsung Magician software, which we'll use to update the firmware, which will more than likely need to be updated on our M2 NVMe drive. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this very special Bob Ross presentation on building a PC. I hope all of you have a happy Halloween, and no matter where you're watching around the world, you can have a little piece of candy and celebrate the American Halloween holiday with the rest of us. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for being a part of the community. I hope I will see you at some point again, although eventually we'll all be together. Until I see you. He wants me to say bye for now? Okay. Bye for now. He wants me to do it again. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope you have a lovely day. Until I see you, bye for now.